Welcome! Thank you so much for joining me on the Socially Delightful podcast. I'm Jewel, human connection enthusiast and your host, and this show is all about delighting in yourself, delighting in socializing and in others, and creating truly supportive, delightful friendships and relationships, even in our modern world with our modern stress. In this podcast, we have fun creating a new culture of living in social delight. Now let's dive into how we're going to do that today. Oh my gosh, welcome back to the Socially Delightful podcast. I know I say this often, but my whole body is screaming with delight right now because we are with one of my favorite people of all time, Mariah Hedquist. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Mariah, we're going to get into all the details, but Mariah was a past client of mine. She's a dear friend of mine now, and I'm just so excited to share her with all of you because, Mariah, you're just a riot. You're just so fun.
Well, to be described as like one of someone's favorite people, or however you describe it, it feels like a hug. It's just so wonderful.
Well, it is a hug. I am hugging you. So I'm glad you could feel it. But to give everybody a little bit of background on you, Mariah is a salon suite owner and a coach dedicated to hairstylists. Her passion for people is boundless, and her drive to see them succeed is even stronger. With a magnetic personality and a knack for offering fresh perspectives, she leaves you both captivated and inspired. Mariah firmly believes she and others like her are set to transform the beauty industry, and her mission is to empower beauty professionals to create businesses that are not only inclusive and profitable, but are also deeply satisfying for the stylists, owners, and the clients alike. What? Okay. Even just reading your bio and having the privilege to have worked with you, like we worked together years ago, having the privilege to have worked with you and to watch you just embrace all of these strengths and I can't even like just to embrace who you are in such a powerful way, even in that bio, is just like, yes, so good.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, side note before we get into like the nitty gritties, but like how difficult it is for people to talk about themselves. Like when we first started working together, I wasn't working independently, so I was working in a salon. And I remember one day we had someone coming in working on our websites, and we needed a bio. And she came up to me and said, "Okay, Mariah, like, what do you want people to know?" And I just rattled off, these things. And she said, "You were the only one who was able to actually give me an answer." I'm like, that's interesting. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. So, yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that you were able to do it, like you said, like rattle it off again. And it's funny you say that because I know we're going to dive more into this, but I think we really see that in your journey. But I think a byproduct of this work is leading like with your strengths, right? Like I'm really big on connection, especially because our world is so focused on not that. Right, our world is so focused on like, let's be productive, let's achieve. And don't get me wrong, I do think at some level that is important, but connection's a fundamental need, right? And I notice when my clients do this, like one thing that happens for them is that they just lead with their strengths, and the fact that you were able to rattle all of that off, and the fact that I was able to read this bio and be like, yes, oh my gosh, it's so bold, it's so strong, it's so you, and it's really like encapsulating you. It just, yeah, so I'm already like off to the races. But I want to give people a little bit background of you and your journey. So before we started working together, can you tell us a bit about you and like what got you kind of into this space to begin with?
That's a really great question. Thinking back, because it's been a few years now, because we worked together for a full year, and then it's been a few years since I was like that version of me. But I think it was just this wanting to, knowing that I had this drive and this desire in me to build my business and just kind of like show up in the world in a stronger way, but getting almost like tripped up on myself. And what attracted me to you specifically, when I, like, for background context, I came across you through another coaching group, and then looking at your social media, the way that you were able to just simplify Like, here's the issue, here's the reason why, and here's the solution. I'm like, that is what I need. That simplification. Because for me, my brain was so simplified. Everything was just so complicated. And trying to find the right answer, the best answer, the perfect answer, the shortest distance from point A to point B. And then, like, it wasn't enough to just do that part. It's like I had to get it right or show up like an expert or be perfect, like in that whole process. Otherwise, it was just like a hot mess. But that was like only in my brain. So I really wanted to just simplify my own process
Mm-hmm.
and build the vision that I had. But I was really just struggling with that simplification part because of the overthinking and all the rabbit holes and what ifing and all these things.
Yeah, which is, we don't realize this because I think we've been told that perfectionism is like you need every little thing to be perfect, like you're super detail oriented, but that is perfectionism. It's spitting out and, right, like obsessing over, I need to make sure I do this right. I excuse me. I need to make sure that this looks perfect. I need to get this right and figure it all out right now. Like, getting
Mm-hmm.
lost in that, getting spun up in that, overthinking is a big sign of perfectionism. Which I know I reminded you before we hopped on because I was like, this was a while ago, and I keep all of my clients' files. And honestly, sometimes because I get way too close to the work, right? So sometimes I'll go
Mm-hmm.
through y'all's files and I'll be like, how did they describe this? Because I always want to make sure I'm like speaking to y'all in your language, if you will. Uh, but I went through, it was just so fun. I went through your file before hopping on today, and I was like, oh, yeah. Mariah and I were talking a lot about showing up imperfectly and taking action and, showing up online as yourself. Like, yeah, do you remember that?
I do. I do. And it's interesting. It's like I still experience the same, almost like the same hula hoops like today, but it's just different the way that I'm addressing them. Like back then, it just seems so like there's too many hula hoops and there's hula hoops like on my arms and my legs and my head and my neck and I just don't know what the heck is going on. But now it's like, oh, I know how to hula hoop. I know how to like do this dance here and I can manage all these pieces. It's like there's a different experience that I'm having now than I was having then. Now I know, okay, I can step back and like this is within my grasp and capability. But then it was just like a mystery. Like I just don't know how to do this, and there's something wrong with me for
Yeah.
not knowing how to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, it becomes really shameful, if you will. It becomes really personal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Super. It's a cycle for sure. And so the thing that we talked about a lot, especially when we were working together, was having your own back. And that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. To me, it means having a nurturing relationship with yourself, with your negative emotions, having the narrator in your brain be supportive of you and be kind to you, even when you are imperfect, even when you are maybe, feeling a negative emotion. And I just want to know, for you, how would you describe like having your own back? Like, what does that mean to you?
I think it's very similar to what you said, is not necessarily um, the voice in your head being this like almost like overdone where your opinion or your thought is the only one that matters. And it's like, no, I am like 10 toes down on my belief because, that's how I have my back. It's more like what you were saying. Okay, I'm going to put myself out here in this way, or I'm going to try something new. And at the end of the day, the last voice that I'm left with is my own. So what does that voice sound like? How does it talk to me? For me, and we might get into this, but for me, there was a lot of like desire for external validation. And so I would ask myself, what is it that I'm wanting to hear from the world around me? And can I just say that to myself? Can I just treat myself that way rather than hoping, like crossing my fingers that somebody's going to give me a compliment or whatever? Can I just do that for myself and build build a relationship with myself in that way. So I think my definition is very similar to yours for what that looks like, and that's how I still kind of practice it to this day.
Yeah, okay. Let's get into that external validation too. Because again, just to make sure everybody's really clear, so when I started coaching, and this is actually so fun, it's such a full circle moment because when I started coaching, I was just doing life coaching, and all I knew was this life coach that also was a school social worker, and that was my first coach ever. She helped me so much, that was my perception of what a life coach was. And so I did all these certifications and I was like, okay, I'm just going to do this on the side. And I think, and I'm going to elaborate because I hate when people are like, and then it just blew up because it's like, no, it didn't just happen. Uh, like luck and like timing and stuff are a thing. Don't get me wrong. But I think really what helped is I was explaining things like you said, and that's what attracted uh, you to me was I was explaining things in a way that was like super simple, and I did that because it was just so helpful for me to understand those things and to have somebody make it super simple for me. And so that's why I keep y'all's files is like I can go through and I can be like, how are y'all describing things? How can I make sure this is even easier and even easier and even easier for my people to understand? And it's such an empathetic approach, y'all. And like if anybody's listening to this, y'all know I don't have like the biggest audience in the world, but I've always been like fully booked, if you will. And I think it's because of that.
Hmm.
So just putting that out there, like connection, even in that marketing incident in that example is huge. And if y'all want to hear more about that, we have an episode with Jessica McKinley that goes into that. But anyway, I it's so fun because I was just doing general life coaching. And when you and I go to networking events and stuff together, again, and I know I said this at the beginning, but you were so fun. And when from the second we started working together, I saw right your spunk, your energy, you're hilarious. And that wasn't coming out in any of your marketing. Or at the
Yeah.
time anyway, right? Like, and I love how you even included that in your bio, like with the magnetic personalities. It's so true. And what I think really helped you unleash that and like embrace those strengths that you have, because we know that magnetic personalities can be different, right? Somebody can be quiet and soft and be magnetic, somebody can be loud and be magnetic. And for you, again, your humor, your spunk, your joy. And interesting because as you and I were working together, we were helping you have your own back. We were helping you, if you will, wrangle those hula hoops. Such a great example. Maybe taking some of the hula hoops off, so that way we could spin the ones we actually wanted. And by doing that, in my opinion, you also became such a billboard for what this process really looks like. And so whenever we go to networking events, I see people, feel so comfortable talking to you and experience like joy with you. So I'm just curious on your thoughts about that.
Man, where do I even go with that? Yeah. So to your point, it wasn't coming out in my marketing, and it's very interesting because I still feel like it's just something about writing copy or like taking your personality and like putting it almost like through the filter of a piece of technology. It's kind of like if you go to write a paper and there's like that paper voice, like when you're in college and it's like, "Oh, it's so prim and proper," and like your research
Yeah.
paper persona. So part of me still comes up while I'm doing my marketing and things now. I have definitely allowed more of myself to shine because I just find like, oh, well, if I'm going to be doing it, then at least I want to have fun with it. And, let's just have fun with it. And people obviously connect with the humor. And sometimes, depending on what it is that I'm talking about, the topics can be a little bit heavier or more sensitive, or
Mhm.
people can get kind of activated pretty easy. And so I find that the humor helps to soften that whole experience while still making the information digestible and tangible. So I like that. I like that because I find that it helps me to connect more. But I do still personally feel like I shine in person. And I think that I get the most excited when I can just see that person in front of me, because I'm like the kid in the candy store. I'm like, oh my gosh, like a new person. Like, this is so great. Just because who are you? You know, who are you? How do you like acclimate in the world? I'm just so captivated by it. I personally don't feel like I get that same experience digitally because I'm not seeing the person in front of me. So I can manage it digitally, but I definitely prefer those face-to-face engagements, or when I'm like speaking and teaching. I've had other people say this too, like when I sit in your classes, it's just like, wow, like that's your zone, because of just the people in the room. I get so excited. So, and I think that like letting that part out with the humor piece, you know, I've just always kind of been goofy and lighthearted in that way. And so that kind of helps people immediately become more comfortable, or like, oh, if she's being goofy, then I could be goofy too. And it's not a weird thing, because like we're all just goofy here. We're all just goofy here. And so, yeah, it's it's a, it's been an exercise too in just letting myself shine without that persona being the like the checklist, or like the standard. It's like, oh, no, we don't need all that. Just be yourself. So cliche, but just be yourself. I think I answered the question.
Yeah.
Did I?
And I think, yes, yes, definitely. I think in order to be yourself, though, you have to have your own back, right? Like, in order to not be perfect all of the time and embrace that, and to feel like you don't need to like prove something, and to feel like, because what you also described there, and I love it too, is that, how do I want to say this? Because when we were, and I only know this because I looked at your file, but when we were working together, especially in the very, very beginning, there was a lot of like, what's the right thing to do? And that, I think, right, we don't need to demonize any question, but what you just said, even now, like, oh, this is my zone of genius, this is what I love, and embracing that and leaning into those strengths, that is something that you have really done, and I've seen you really do. But it takes like that, okay, instead of like, what is this person over here saying, like, what's the right thing to do, what's the perfect thing to do, like, okay, also asking yourself, where are my strengths and how can I use that? That's one thing that I have known for myself. I really struggled, like, write like really long form content. And so for a minute there, I was thinking, oh, maybe I could do like a blog and write about this stuff in detail. And, you know, that helps SEO and promote your business and things like that. But I was like, no, that's not my strength. My strength is like speaking to people and having conversations. So I'm going to do a podcast, right? Like, instead of like forcing myself into something. So I think, because I know and can reflect back to you, I've seen your marketing just blossom like online. Like, I remember you posted these stories and you were telling the story of uh, your husband proposing to you, and you, it was so Mariah, it was so fun, there was a clear lesson in there, it was so authentic. And I remember you telling me about it in a session. You were like, yeah, that went over really well. And I was like, yeah. It did, because it was you, and it was you leaning into your strengths. And I think it's also helpful for everybody listening that it doesn't mean that those things completely go away. Just like how we talk about like social anxiety doesn't have to completely go away, for you to embrace and, like you say, manage it. But also, let's focus on your strengths and how you want to connect with people as your strength. So, like, for example, just to throw it in there, for an introvert, speaking to like a bunch of groups probably isn't like the best strategy for you if you are looking to make new friends or have more connection, right? What's probably going to be best for most introverts, they do really well one on one, and they love those deep conversations. So if you go to an event, just have a bunch of really like one on one deep conversations with people, like leaning into that strength. So anyway, that's my little soapbox as far as that goes. But how do you think that this work in like managing your mind and having your own back, how do you think that impacted you then? And then we'll get into how that's still like building now.
I think that working with you and then working in that longer term. So we did 2 rounds of 6 months. And so remember this, that first 6 months was where I was like, oh, wow, like I can really see cause and effect of my own thought process. And then recognizing my own ability to change or influence my experiences or my outcomes based off of just my own like perceptions. Like I started to really grasp it. And then that second round of 6 months was where it kind of, I think I like embodied it really. And my own little theory here, I don't know, that was the journey for me. I would like to think that it's possible to do it faster. I think it's just contingent upon your willingness to like lean all the way in and let yourself really have those experiences. Where for me, I was like, in the beginning too, is kind of like caught in like the ideation of like, but does this make sense? But how does it make sense? How does this fit in? And not going to the action part and doing that learning. So I think that it's possible to learn it faster. Just a little like side note, not that I'm like judging my length of time at all. I think it was perfect for me, but it was learning how I process information and then using that information now going forward. Okay, this is like my default little mode and pattern here. This is kind of where my inclinations are going to go naturally. And I can either follow that or I can choose something else. And now I know how to choose something else and I can anticipate my own resistances to choosing something else. And so it just kind of helped to create like a more fluid experience for me. And so it just kind of like became new baseline for me going forward into the future.
Yeah. So good. So good. So you mentioned earlier that one of those patterns was external validation and like wanting people to say certain things to you. Can you tell us a bit about like that pattern and understanding what was going on for you in your brain then?
Dude, we need like a study. We need to like crack open my brain. I wish I had it like all kind of spelled out. I think I was even just thinking about it today of like, what are you like what are you really hoping to get from that experience, like deep down, and where do you think that that comes from? Just kind of like asking these curious questions of myself. And kind of what I realize is like there's just something about it that it's very interesting. I think it's like the logical experience versus the emotional experience, because there's something about it that feels really really good, but then logically I can look at it and be like, that's not really like necessary though. Like you don't need that like to function. But then there's that other part that's like, yes, I do. I really do. It just and how those parts like kind of battle with each other. So it's very fascinating, but I think like this is an example of how you can process when you learn yourself, because it's like I'm observing this happening versus being so far in it that it's like I just don't know which way is up. I'm outside. I can look at these pieces and say, okay, this is like what my emotions are saying. This is like what I'm logically saying. Here's what I think I'm trying to get from this like hunt for external validation. Maybe it's like that guides how I'm interacting with like my husband or my family members or whomever, like, and I'm in relationships with, or guiding how I'm going to proceed with myself. Like it just helps me make different choices so that it's not hanging everything on like somebody else's thoughts, feelings, reactions, and things like that. Like things that are out of my control and just not for me to manage.
Yeah, I love that. So, in other words, if it's fair to say, helps to understand yourself, your patterns, so that way you can observe them. And I think the observation and the distance from it is huge. I think as well, having a compassionate observer is also really huge because and just to put it in an example for everybody listening, because our brain rate processes things in stories, I have this memory of sitting at my past kitchen table and having this like visceral emotional reaction because I was thinking like, oh my gosh, all of my friends secretly hate me, right?
Mhm.
And I remember having this moment, but because I had done like what you described of being aware of my brain, understanding what my brain's getting out of these habits, and knowing that there are other options and how to wrangle it, right? I remember sitting there and having this again like visceral reaction. And I remember like it was such a profound experience in my life because I remember really like holding myself and I remember being like, I don't believe this anymore. But I get it, Jewel. I get it. I get that you are really trying to protect yourself from rejection. And so you're really looking for it right now. You're looking for all of the ways, and quote unquote, your friends hate you. So that way you aren't like exiled from the group. I don't believe that anymore. I don't believe that they hate me. Right. But this doesn't mean that that made the emotion go away. But
Mhm.
that observer, if you will, was so compassionate. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. Like you were talking about towards the beginning of that narrator, like the voice that you speak to yourself with, and like our inner narrator gets its script from many different places, but I think realizing that your own voice can be that narrator, like how you said that compassionate voice, like how would you prefer to be spoken to? What do you need? I think nurture is a really really big thing. I think that like we're so nurture deprived almost like in our society because it's kind of like nurture, I almost said nurturement, but nurturing takes time. It takes, you have to slow down. You have to be curious about, well, what's the need here, and then how am I going to meet this need, and like how does this person or whoever, like this is really ringing true because for people that don't know, I just had a baby, so nurturing is like huge. Like, what does she need? How am I going to provide that need for her? You don't get to rush through it because you just, that's not a thing. And so that nurture, and that it's okay to do that for yourself. You don't have to like rush, or it's not self-indulgent, or all these other kind of narratives that come up when you think about just like, let me slow down here and really like get my bearings and reacclimate to the situation, because that informs what your next steps are going to be, and then those next steps lead to whatever that future outcome is, and so on and so forth. It's like a domino effect. So it's almost like it costs you to not do it, it costs you to do it in a different way, but it's just understanding those dynamics, and then you can make a more like a more informed decision about how you want to move forward.
I love that. Yeah, and I mean to keep it going with that example, everybody, like, what if I didn't sit there and be like, "Oh, I see this, I get it, like it's okay," right? What if I believed it, if you will, were really in it and be like, "Oh, I'm feeling this way, so it must be true." Like, how would it? How do y'all think I would have interacted with my friends after that? Right? Like you said, I love that informed decision. That's such a good way of putting it. Yeah. So I know that we talked about having your own back, and then I know, so I have everybody that I have on the podcast come on and talk about like I have them fill out a form about like, oh, what topics they want to talk about and things like that. And Mariah put how having your own back and supporting yourself opens doors to new experiences, helps you make connections and friends, and how to change the tone of your inner narrator. So, so good. Can you tell us a bit about how it has opened doors for you and allowed you to have like new experiences?
Yeah, I think that you always hear as an adult, and probably your audience comes with this sort of like mentality as well, of like, it's so hard to make friends as an adult. It's so hard to make friends like in your 30s or like in your 20s or whatever. And it's interesting because I can see why people say that. And then my thought is like, no, it's not. You just gotta like, you just get out there and you put yourself in the situations where you can find a friend and make a friend. Now I know, easier said than done. But for me, I have a great group of close friends, fair amount of like acquaintances and people that I'm really friendly with. And I don't find it so challenging to make a friend because it's like, well, because of the having your own back mentality. It's like, I know that if I want to make a friend in this now or wherever I'm going, or if I want to connect with someone at this event or however, then I'm going to have to put myself out there, and I'm going to have to let them see me. And then that opens me up to the possibility that they might not like what they see, but that's okay. Like, that doesn't mean anything negative about me. That doesn't mean that I have to like agree with them. And then also the likelihood of someone having this like monumental judgment about me after like 5 minutes, probably very slim. So just relax and go out and just kind of enjoy yourself, enjoy and like enjoying this other person. That's what when I get tripped up now, I remind myself, for me, how much I enjoy other people. Like, go out there and just enjoy them. And then that opens up that door for those experiences with people, or even just trying new things, like trying a new hobby or activity or whatever. The perfection brain is like, oh no, I'm not going to do that because I'm going to look stupid. People might see me struggle or whatever. It's like, well, yeah, you're not an expert in rock climbing. You've never climbed a rock before in your life. Relax. Again, just like going, that's how I talk to myself. Just like
Yeah.
chill out, dude. Relax. Yeah, so like this, the way I think about it is like, you want to do this thing, whether it's like you think it's fun or you think it's interesting or you find some value in it. So let's set yourself up to like have that experience and just get out there, little guy, get out there.
Yeah. Yes, I love it. I love it. And so much easier to do when you're not trying to think about, how do I do this right? How do I say this right? Right? When you really have your own back. And I love that you said this, like focusing on enjoying other people, which also leads me to, and this is something that you and I did not talk about while we were working together. We both have, again, I've talked to, like, whenever we're at networking events together, I'm always like, isn't she like the most like magnetic person you've ever met? Like, is it like she's such a billboard for this? And gosh, like, it's because you embody what really makes like a charismatic person. And so everybody listening, I used to think like charisma, like in the past, was like, oh, you know how to like tell a story and you know how to be captivating and interesting. That's not it. Charisma is just confidently connecting with other people and doing that like efficiently. And embody the three principles of that. So, principle one, like being empowered, two, warmth, and three, presence. And I think everybody listening, you can take that away from everything that Mariah has said so far, of her ability to watch any thoughts and feelings and observe and not be in it, her ability to go to events and to enjoy other people and to focus on her strengths. That's an empowered thing to do. That's a very present thing to do. That's a very warm thing to do. Like everything that you've mentioned so far, Mariah, you've brought yourself back to those things. So I've never told you that before, but
Yeah, no,
that
thanks.
is, yeah, that is what you've done. So what do you think about it when you hear it?
Well, it's interesting because it's like, when I think about how I do engage with others, it's almost like I go in with this mentality, but then that other person, like, they're an ingredient in the whole dynamic as well. Because, like, for me, I love to make people laugh. Who doesn't like to laugh? And, when you can really like get somebody and it's like that, like, knee slapping, like can't breathe laugh. It's just so wonderful. And everybody loves it. Like, I laugh, they laugh. It's just, that's wonderful. But if I like crack a joke and someone is just like straight face me, that's kind of like, okay, well, I'll go this way then, just because there's not like, there's nothing like, they're not like participating in it. So it's kind of like a little dance, back and forth. And so there is that other side of the equation as well, where it's like you just kind of go in and like thinking about who is this person? How can I, like, what can I learn about them? Because I'm just personally fascinated by people and just how they are. And then that tennis, like I hit the ball, and then are you going to hit it back, or are you just going to like let it bounce over there? And okay, if you want to let it bounce over there, that's
So
cool. And then I'll go over here, and then maybe this person wants to hit it back. And then we just kind of do our little tennis
yeah,
dance.
so rejection resilient, y'all. Yeah, like, do you hear it? And it goes with too. We did an episode recently called The Art of Conversation, and basically a conversation are two people mutually agreeing to understand each other. That's like every conversation we ever have. That's what it is, right? And so that's such a great analogy. It's like sometimes people aren't willing to play tennis with you. But again, y'all, like Mariah at one point in time was a perfectionist in areas of life. If somebody was a social perfectionist in that way, then you're more likely to be like, oh my gosh, it's because I'm not funny, it's because this, it's because of that, right? Like the need for external validation is so big when we are perfectionists and to people please. Like people pleasing and perfectionism go hand in hand, you know? So like again, you're just like really demonstrating it with everybody or for
Yeah, and
everybody.
I think like to add to it, something that helps me, maybe this will be helpful for someone that's listening, is like when there is that temptation to go down that like, oh my gosh, I'm trash rabbit hole. Like I totally have been there. Like please don't think I'm fully evolved because I'm not. I'm just practiced in this area. So rather than going down there, I also remind myself it's kind of coming back to present of like, oh, they don't want to play tennis, but maybe they don't want to play tennis right now for whatever reason. Like maybe
Mm-hmm.
there, because we can kind of like trick ourselves into thinking like we know other people's motivations or like why they're doing certain things, and we make it all about us. Like of course they're not playing tennis with me because they think I suck or they don't like my outfit or whatever, when it's possible that they're over there like, oh my gosh, I haven't swung a tennis racket in how long, and everyone's looking at me like they could be having their own like narrative happening over there, and we don't know unless they tell us, and maybe some of us guess, and sometimes our guesses are accurate, but that does not mean that we are like qualified fortune tellers with our crystal ball that know all
Yeah.
everything. So maybe they just don't want to play tennis right now. That's okay. I'll go over here with this person that does, and then maybe hey, if I come back around, maybe they'll feel ready, or maybe like next time we're in the same proximity together. Like it's just very like coming back to the present helps me to expand my thought process and kind of like get out of my own head, because it's not so finite. It's like, oh, it's just not right now, and it could be later, it could be whatever. It's
Yeah.
fine. It's totally fine.
So good. I love that. I love it. And it's very much not making it personal, which I know you and I have talked about a bunch of this is something that is going on with them in their brain, which I think also helps when you start to understand, oh, here's my brain and my patterns, and here's how I freak out, and you become an observer of that. I had a client and we were talking about it today where she was like, it's kind of hard for me to take things personally now. She was like, I not that you don't have an initial reaction, right? And I love that you are normalizing that for everybody, because everybody listening needs to hear that, you know, just because you have tools, just because you practice this work, and it doesn't mean, and could be somebody that's so magnetic like Mariah, it doesn't mean that you have like perfect thoughts all the time, or that you don't have that initial like, ooh, ouch. That is normal. Your brain is never going to not do that. And I think that after that initial reaction, your second reaction is really you, right? You managing, you nurturing, you being the observer, right? And so a client was telling me earlier today, she was like, immediately, I'm always like, but what's going on with them that they would like say that, you know? And it's also everybody listening, they're normally like, you, all of you are just very empathetic people, and it's just using that empathy for you rather than against you in that way, to be like, oh, I wonder what's going on with them, because it's something that their brain is doing, right? Like I love the way you explained it too, because I know so many people have told me that after COVID they were like, I don't know how to socialize anymore, and like I don't know how to do it. So like literally for a lot of people right now, y'all, it's been, how do I talk to people, how do I swing a tennis racket, right? And so if they give you like a, they don't laugh at your joke, they give you a blank stare, like literally like what's going on with that other person, or where their brain's at right now, or like a patterning that they have.
Yeah, and then I think like too, just in the time and space that we live in, wondering, did I say something that offended this person or upset? Like a kind of like there are blatant things that people can be more touchy about, and then there are other things that are more personalized and individualized. And to have the expectation that you individually would know all of the things that would set off another person is just really unrealistic. But I think there's
Yes.
even like that too of like, man, like reading that feedback, and maybe it's just like you were saying, that kind of like the clunkiness of learning how to communicate and connect again. And then while that person is giving you their feedback or whatever, we're having this narrative of like, oh my gosh, I must have upset them, and like I should have known that I shouldn't have said that, and like, which if you really step back and look at it, is crazy work. You can't know all of the things because everybody is so individual, right? And so the best that you can do is maybe even just be willing to, in the conversation, lean into that like curiosity, like you were saying, is like, what is going on with them? And maybe you could pose that in some kind of a way that feels appropriate to give them space to give you some feedback, like kind of help them along. And then maybe you can start a conversation, or maybe you
Love it.
could sort out what is going on there, and then it could become something productive, or you can kind of like navigate that clunkiness together in some kind of a way. But I think that there's that element too of like, perhaps we weren't the best communicators and connectors before, and then now in this very unprecedented time and space that we're living in, there's a lot of nuance of like, I don't want to upset this person, so let me tread super lightly, which I think can then kick up all of that overthinking and stuff like that. So it's just kind of like, I think there's also a skill in learning how to like kind of bring it back. Like, maybe you did hit somebody's button. How do we bring it back to like let them know, oh no, no, that's not what I was trying to
Yes.
do. It's not what I was trying to do at all.
Mhm.
So let's just bring it back. Let's bring it back.
Right. So good. And again, it's very empathetic. It is. It's so funny you mentioned that because I had a different client literally earlier today tell me that she was having a hard conversation with a friend, and was talking about a topic that's sensitive to her friend. So it wasn't necessarily that the two of them were having a hard conversation, but she was bringing up something that she knew like her friend might have some feelings about. And so then she literally asked her, "How was that for you? How
Mm.
was it for you for me to talk about it in that way?" And that's very, again, that's using her strength, her skill of empathy to communicate clearly in that example. But I love that you brought that up. I think I couldn't have said it better myself. It's also us being afraid of offending people is, again, I think on some level it's a good thing because it's exercising our care for other people. Like, that's one example I actually use often when I'm like, this is why you care what other people think, because you don't want to offend anybody. Like, you don't want to do that. But it is also, like you said, on some level inevitable. Like, you just can't know. It's an unrealistic expectation. And I think it's a new layer of social perfectionism that we've kind of added onto ourselves where we're like, I need to be perfect and not offend anybody ever all the time. And that's not possible. One thing that they say when you're learning about how to do trauma informed care is that you're never going to not harm somebody. Even if you learn all these ways of like not triggering people, like you're never going to not harm somebody because, like, for example, right now orange could be a trigger for somebody watching this. I can't control that, right? Like, I can't, like you said, know that. And so they say a lot in when it comes to being trauma informed is, okay, how can I like mitigate harm and repair? Because, but also it's inevitable. We're all going to harm each other or even like offend each other on some level.
Yeah, and I think that like, again, going back to like your inner narrator, when you're like maybe processing later of like, okay, how do I want to use this moving forward, or getting to that point of realizing you can take things and use it for your growth moving forward. Like, I'm not here trying to lob grenades into people's lives and just like cause chaos and be like wildly offensive and upsetting and all of that. Let's realize that maybe something did happen. How do we, like you said, repair and kind of bring it back? And then acknowledging too, which I think is like a interesting flavor of respecting people's autonomy, understanding that they might not be receptive to like your repair, and that's a choice
Yeah.
that they get to make, and that's okay. Like, we can respect that, and you did the best that
Yeah.
you could. And again, maybe it's a not right now thing. Maybe you can step away and then they come
Right.
back and have a change of heart or whatever, what have you. But letting people have that space to say, thank you, I accept that apology or like explanation, or no, thank you. And kind of like
Yeah.
allowing that, to be a thing. as well. So I wanted to share that because that kind of came up as you were talking it through. It's like not necessarily having the skill isn't necessarily a magic wand that then suddenly makes everything turn out perfectly in your
Yes.
human relationships, because there is another person on the other side who gets to make their own choices. And the best thing, I personally think, like the highest form of respect is to just respect their autonomy, their humanhood, their personhood, and even if it stings like you a little bit in that
Like fucking drop. Like, yes, I've thank you for sharing that and putting that in that way. Thank you. That is so we need to put all that on t-shirts and put that everywhere. Oh my goodness. So good. So good. So wow. I mean, and I love just to touch on like a smaller point that you said. You said that just because you have the tools doesn't mean that it's a magic wand. And I think you've done such a beautiful job today sharing with everybody like here's how it has really helped me and I'm still human.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, like I also know and I want to demonstrate for some people because sometimes people hear that, right? And they're in a space where they're like, I don't think this can get any better. So hearing that, oh, this never goes away feels so defeating, right? I know my past self. I was like, "Are you serious? So this is what I'm going to deal with forever." And the way I like to describe it sometimes is like that insecurity or that overthinking that I used to do. It really now feels like a pebble in a fish tank.
Mm-hmm.
And it used to feel like it took up the entire fish tank, like a big rock, right? It's so easy to manage now. So I also want to hear from your perspective. How have like these mindset tools that allow you to observe, not be in it, and these tools to have your own back, like these let's just call them self coaching tools. Because that's also too the work that we really did, right? Was okay.
Yeah.
Here's how we wrangle the brain with self coaching tools. How has that changed your life?
I mean, it's changed my life because it changes the way that I show up in the world. So like as you were talking about like someone hearing, oh, I have to do this, or like I can do all this work and then still kind of feel this way and it feels defeating. I can certainly understand that, acknowledge. And here's a little analogy I want to give you. I'm going to assume very generously that we all brush our teeth every day when we wake up in the morning, right? And nobody gets up and is like, oh my gosh, I have to brush my teeth again. Because we know that if we don't do that hygiene part of ourselves, then we're going to have some problems. You know, we're going to have
Yeah.
whole slew of issues from like people maybe not wanting to be around you to like your teeth falling out of your head. Like that's the spectrum that we're rocking with on that. We know I get up in the morning, I'm brushing my teeth. I'm gonna have to brush my teeth tonight. I'm gonna have to brush my teeth tomorrow. I may have to brush them in the middle of the day. It's a tool, right? To do what? To maintain the best oral hygiene possible. So like these tools that we have, what's the purpose of them? I would say have the healthiest like relationships possible. And that doesn't mean perfect. That doesn't mean a relationship where there is no tension or like conflict or whatever, but being able to navigate those in healthy and productive ways. Because I think another thing that makes human dynamics funky is that fear of like, gosh, if I express that I don't like something, or if I express a need, or if I say no to this person, or if I like any kind of like resistance other than like just like kind of go with it, then I'm going to lose that relationship. And that's not the case. Or like in healthy, functional relationships, that's not the case. And so these are tools that help you with your relationship hygiene and create safety for yourself to be able to say, here's my need, here's my thought, and put it out there to those people, whoever it is, so that you can have the healthiest relationship that you can aim for. So it's like a hygiene tool, just like you brush your teeth, so you have teeth. You do this stuff in your brain so that you can have so that you can set yourself up to have the healthiest experience. And I like that word healthy rather than like best, or you could use the word functional, because I don't want to make it like too ideal, like everything goes perfect or we never have any issue, because but you can still have a healthy relationship that you enjoy with conflict, with issues, and all of these things when you know how to communicate and
Yeah.
navigate through. So these tools help you to do that. It's changed how I communicate with everybody that's close to me, really leaning into like, okay, I'm gonna trust this person to not reject me by me bringing this thing up, because I think that this is going to be a really helpful thing for our relationship in the long run. Or like, I want to clear up confusion or misunderstanding or whatever, because I want to be close to this person still. And so this is what's going to help me do that. So that's how it's changed my life personally.
I love it. And even if it doesn't, right? And I know you've touched on that so many times today. I love that you said the highest form of respect is letting people have their autonomy, which like we need to put everywhere. But I think too, again, we're recording on a Friday. On Fridays, I have like 1,000 clients. Okay, that's dramatic, but I like just tons of back to back amazing sessions. So I had a different client today. And one thing we were talking about was using the tools to manage their mind to have a tough conversation. And even if that person doesn't respond well, that they know how to, like you said, have safety, have their own back, and that they're still going to risk it, if you will, and risk rejection and have that conversation because of what you just said. It's worth it. It's worth it to try to have a closer relationship with somebody.
Yeah, yeah. And thinking about it through that lens of like, what's the objective here? What is my end goal here? And then maybe realizing, oh, wanting to preserve your relationship, excellent. Wanting to stay close to this person, excellent, great. Wanting to be right and like prove that I'm right and like that, maybe not so great. So let's take a step back and like kind of clean up a little bit before we go and have that conversation. Because a lot of times going forward with that mentality, we might just start fighting. And then that doesn't do anything but like exhaust your energy and like other things. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I want to touch on a couple more things. And again, I think I'm just really thinking, I don't know why, but I'm really thinking about, and maybe it's my past self, because if I would have heard, oh, I have to deal with this shit, I would have been like, oh my God, I'm so sick of this pain.
Yeah.
And I want to hear a few more things. So, how has it changed like the feeling of your life too? Because I think having the skills, having the choice, showing up how you want to show up, but also how does that fucking feel?
It feels, I think, so the first like word that comes up is it has made my life feel more vibrant. Like there's a different vibrancy, because rather than relegating like all the feel good feelings for like the trophy moment, which is so common in perfectionism and like in my own coaching work, that like working with a bunch of artists, you can imagine the perfectionism be running wild. Okay. Like, so rather than like reserving all of that, like savoring or like enjoyment of life for those trophy moments, being able to find it in like broadly in like the smaller moments, or like having your attention be drawn to just like things that kind of like really anchor you in the present, or make you feel really good, like big and small and whatever. So all of that to say is just like having this understanding of how I'm perceiving things around me, slowing down and everything, and being present in the world, it has given my life a different level of vibrancy. Because like I could even go to just like, because I like being around people, I could go to Target and just observe all the people in like their natural habitat. And that's so wonderful to me. It's like, oh my gosh, that lights me up because I can just have that type of experience. So anyway, it's given a level of vibrancy to life that I don't think I had before, because I was just so like off in the weeds of my own thought tangles and wasn't able to be present in my own life experience in the same way.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. And again, if I don't know why, I don't know why, and I'm not a very if at all, like for me personally, I'm not a very spiritual person, but there's something about like me talking to that person. I don't know if it's the time of year, I don't know what it is, but thank you for saying that, because if I would have heard that as my past self who was really struggling, that would have given me so much hope and given me so much like, okay, like this, there's a way to have a different life experience. Does it mean perfect? No, we're sold perfection in a lot of ways, right? Especially in self-help. And I want y'all to all like just absorb and think about, like, because again, this has been years. Mariah and I worked together years ago. So thinking about the long lasting impact of having vibrancy, having more informed decisions on how you want to show up in the world, having ability to communicate, to feel more authentic, to embrace your strengths. Like, I just want y'all to think about the long term impact of this. And I think we're also going to be seeing that in your next chapter of motherhood, because I know you just had your baby.
Oh my gosh, so many things about her, but continue.
So I I want to talk about a couple more things before I let you go. And that is like, how do you think that this will continue to impact you, especially as your baby girl, starts growing up?
Oh, deep sigh. Well, I think already. So because I have changed the narrator in me, now granted, my little grumpy Greta comes up in my mind sometimes still, yes. But the more prevalent voice, she's definitely more calm and compassionate and kind and nurturing, all these things. And that is the voice that I use when I talk to my daughter. And
Mm.
I just believe that now that voice is going to be the foundation of her inner narrator. And my goal as her parent is to teach her, just teach her how to think, not necessarily tell her what I would do, like how I would do it, but let's really think this through. Let's talk this through. Let's like really adapt to our experiences. I'm saying this like she's like a child, like a kid. She's 4 months old almost. So she's itty bitty baby, but these are like the seeds and the foundation. And so it challenges me because I'm speaking to her, because she's watching me, because she spends so much time with me, and because like she knows like 7 people. Her world is so small. So realizing like the level of influence that comes with that, it encourages me even more like in this work to stay connected to it because now she's witnessing all this. So that's like me in my role as a mom, but then like me as a person who is a mom and now being in like mom communities and like on the mom side of the fence, there are a lot of prevailing narratives about what motherhood is like and what it's supposed to be like that me personally, I don't agree with. I find them to be a little bit is disempowering. Is that a word? It feels almost like a backhanded compliment. Some of these messages, like, when you get a backhanded compliment where it's like, you said something that was nice, and I like, seems like it should be a compliment, but I don't feel good. Where it's like that
Yeah.
kind of a thing. I haven't been able to put my finger on it, but it's like you said something that like it sounds like it was supposed to be helpful, but I don't feel helped. I kind of just feel like weird in this. So because I have those tools, because I have my own way of processing, because I have my own back, it's like, okay, yeah, that's what y'all are saying. I'm gonna just try this though and see what I get with this, doing it a different way, because I think that it's certainly not an easy role to be in, but I think that again, going back to how are you managing yourself, because that determines what are you taking on, what are you saying yes to, what are you saying no to, how are you planning out your life, and how are you acclimating and adapting to change, all of that are like the pain points of like the mom life or mom scene or whatever. So anywho, it's just like a a new work. It's like I wouldn't have had this opportunity because I didn't have a child before, but now I do. So it's like a whole another like different level, achievement unlocked. And now
Yeah.
how do these tools work in this venue in this season of my life? So it's certainly, I'm not an expert. I just got here, but it's just like, constant work in progress.
Having a progression mindset, though, is huge for a perfectionist. One, let me tell you, that is one thing I am like, I swear, just pushing at all my clients over and over and over again every week is like progress point of view. And obviously, I'm doing it with love. But yes, I want y'all to hear that, like, tools for life to empower you for how you want to show up, to feel safe, to, in Mariah's words, like, have vibrance for life. And I know that you also use these tools for your business. And I know that you use these tools with your clients as well as tools, right, specific to hairstylists. So, can you tell us a bit about that?
Oh man. Yes. So kind of like how I touched on before, working with artists. And, there's like the artist stereotype that we're just kind of like, like very free spirited, very artsy and whatever. But we're all human. So some artists are that way. And then others are more cerebral and more like process and things like that. The ones that I've worked with, they have they inner vibrancy, and I'm sure you've experienced this as a coach yourself, like being able to see these things in other people that they like, maybe
Yeah,
they
with
acknowledge that
you.
it's there. But
Yeah, with
like, have you ever had that before, like where you just like notice these things? But so they have just like hearts of gold, hearts of gold. But getting so, one of my clients described it as being lost in the library, like in taking so much information, trying to not upset anyone or offend anyone. Kind of like they want to fit in and be like the group, but then they also want to stand out. And it's just this kind of like establishing their own, or maybe it's not even like establishing it, but just being able to like acknowledge it and give it space and give it a voice and say, okay, now let's take her outside into the world and like just be her all the time instead of just up here. And with Perfection Brain, there is just a lot of like the what ifs and like the false narrative that it can create of like, oh, if I go out and I be my authentic self, then that's the right thing to do. And so then I'm going to get like all this amazing, wonderful stuff. And like, I'm going to have all these friends and all these clients and all this money and la, 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 la. And then like the real life experience is like, nah, dude, you're just going out in the world and you're just out now, So it's like also navigating that sort of like the expectations of what the result of the work is going to be. It's not like the jackpot button. It's just like, yeah, being more comfortable in your skin. That's the jackpot, not this other stuff. Like quite literally stuff that we think that stuff is connected, but it's just being more comfortable in your own skin. So how I use the tools in helping them is just to lean into that. Like, who are you as an artist? What is your style? How do you want to show up in the industry? What do you want to have? There's the prevailing narratives. You don't have to subscribe to those. You don't have to believe those. If you don't want, like, if you don't believe them, then just don't, and do your thing as an individual in an industry, but just be able to do your thing. And so what is that, and then how do we want to express that? How do we want to have fun with that, and like, really enjoy bringing that forward? And then what does that look like? Knowing also, this is how we start with one thing. What's interesting with my clients is like, we start off focusing on one thing, and then towards the end, we haven't like changed gears, but it's almost like they've gotten to this point of like, I can do this and I can do that and I can do all these things and I can have this experience and I can go here and I don't have to limit myself. So then they start branching off into like dabbling into other industries and like doing other things in addition to working in their salon spaces, and just like all of this creative expression kind of comes out like towards the end, and it's really cool to watch it happen. So it's just like giving them that space to like, let's let this stuff out and play with it and see how it fits. And then if it works, great. If it doesn't work, okay, great. We're not going to be a jerk to ourselves about it. We're just going to keep on cruising. We're just going to keep on cruising and see where we land. It's like, it's so cool.
So what I'm hearing is you help your artists do what you did
Yeah.
coaching.
Yeah, I think so.
That's the
It's like,
power of it, y'all.
to be able to step back and be like, wow, I am cool. Like, I am pretty cool. Like, in your own way, like how you were talking about, like, magnetic introverts versus magnetic extroverts. Like, I am my own, like, I'm cool in my own way, like how I am. And now I want to take that out into the world and like throw it all around like confetti, because it's just fun. It's just fun, and I enjoy it. I enjoy being myself and expressing myself.
Yes. And trust me, because again, I just read your file. Your past self would be like, thank you. That's like exactly what you wanted. And again, do y'all hear it? Like, you're literally helping your clients do exactly what you did. Like,
Yeah.
and doing it from a perspective of an artist, which I think is so powerful. It's so funny too that you were like, have you ever had a client that you were like, wow, you're so vibrant and wonderful, can you unleash yourself, please? Yes, exactly, I have. Her name was Mariah Hedquist, and I remember it so much too, because Mariah, one time, you and I have the screenshot of it, so it's so funny, but one time you messaged me saying that you were so on fire and had so like you were just so excited about yourself and about sharing your basically who you are with the world that you said in capital letters, I'm gonna clown all the way to the bank because we were talking about sharing you and your business. You were like, I'm gonna clown all the way to the bank.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember saying that. I remember how I felt in that moment. I remember all of that for sure. I do. I remember that.
So good. I think too, one thing that this also just highlights for everybody is that this becomes who you are, it becomes natural. And again, I can't say it enough. Like this was years ago. And so this is really who Mariah is now. So today's interview and talking about this past, because again, it was like 3 years ago at this point.
Mm.
So for Mariah, right, like we're like really digging up some of the old things. And so y'all can just hear it in the way that you're speaking that this is who you are now. And I just want to highlight that to everybody. Like it's so beautiful. It's so fun to watch. It's so fun to watch you in these next chapters that you've built. It's so fun to be your friend now. And I appreciate you so much for coming on. So thank you for coming on the Socially Delightful podcast, Mariah. We have to have you back.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to your people and your audience. Because that certainly is not anything that I take lightly to be allowed into the different spaces. So thank you. And I certainly hope that people got some laughs, got some little nuggets of life lesson or something, just walking away with something. Because that's really the whole purpose of sharing all of this is like, I don't want to just like gas myself up and be like, look at me. But I want to be like, hey, dude, like there's hope. Like there is hope for change, for sustainable change. You know, don't be afraid of like, am I going to do all this and then it's going to like all disappear and fall out of your ears? No, it's not. You get it. You get to have it forever and always.
Yes. And y'all go check Mariah out. Her Instagram handle is, oh, I just had it up. The life coach for hairstylists. So send this to your friend that's a hairstylist. Go check out Mariah, especially if you are a hairstylist. I actually know a couple of you are. You told me. So especially you two that have messaged me. Go hang out with Mariah. Mariah has also, like, I love that you are talking about it from an art form and helping them embrace who they are as an artist. I also know that you have a wealth of knowledge of business and business skills and that you share things like that. So again, please send Mariah's profile, send this episode to your friend that is a hairstylist. It's nobody really like gives you like a business in a box, right? So it's, and Mariah again like has just such a wealth of knowledge to share. So I do your friend a favor and pass that knowledge on.
Yeah, dude, like my DMs are open 100%. I am, if you haven't guessed, a very friendly individual. I will never be annoyed. If you send me a 5-minute voice message, love it. If you send me a novel in text, love it. If you have a question, if you have anything, like if it's like you said, business related, this work related, I have a background in education, like for like the nitty gritty technical stuff, like color theory, all this stuff. I have lots of connections in the industry as well. So if you need a connection to someone or something, I got you 100%. Like, do not be afraid. Do not be shy. Get what you need because you deserve it. And so if I can help you in any way, just let me know. Holla at your girl. I'll be there.
Thanks for joining me on the Socially Delightful podcast. I'm Jewel, and I'm truly so grateful that you came and hung out with me today. If this podcast meant something to you, it would mean so much to me if you left me a review so that way I could keep making content that you love. And if you really want to make my whole day, share this podcast to your Instagram story and tag me at Connection with Jewel so I can shout you out, or send me a message and let me know what resonated with you or what you want to hear next. And I'll see you at the next episode.